I was home alone one weekend last year. My parents were out of town and my older brother had already moved out, so it was just me in the house. Nothing unusual. I'd been home alone plenty of times before. The first night was fine. I ordered a pizza, watched a movie, and went to bed around midnight. It was a quiet night, nothing out of the ordinary. But the second night is when things got weird. I was in the living room around 10 o'clock, just scrolling on my phone with the TV on in the background. I remember hearing this faint knocking sound coming from the back door. It wasn't loud, just a few taps, but enough to make me put my phone down. At first I thought maybe it was the wind, because we have one of those loose screens that rattles sometimes. But then it happened again, 3 slow knocks. I froze for a second, trying to convince myself it was nothing. I muted the TV and just sat there listening. After a minute I got up, walked to the kitchen and peeked out the back window that faces the yard. I didn't see anyone. The yard light was on and everything looked normal. I figured maybe it was some animal bumping against the door, so I brushed it off and went back to the couch. But a little while later, I started hearing these really faint creaks from upstairs. They sounded exactly like floorboards being stepped on. That's when I remembered. Every single window upstairs was locked. I'd checked them earlier in the day. Still, the sound kept coming, like slow pacing across the hallway floor above me. I grabbed the remote, turned the TV up louder, and sat there pretending it wasn't happening. But I couldn't relax. Every few minutes, I'd mute the TV and just listen. Sometimes I'd hear nothing, and then out of nowhere, 1 or 2 creaks again. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to go upstairs. I told myself I was being paranoid and I'd sleep better if I just checked. I walked up slowly, flipped the hallway light on, and looked around. My room, my parents' room, the spare room. Nothing looked out of place. I even opened the closets. Everything seemed fine. So I went back downstairs, locked the basement door just in case, and decided to call it a night. I went to bed around midnight, left my lamp on, and tried to fall asleep. It took a while, but I finally dozed off. At around 3 in the morning, though, I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door handle clicking, like someone had lightly tried to twist it. I shot up in bed and just stared at the door. My heart was racing, but the handle didn't move again. I sat there for what felt like forever, waiting to hear something else. Eventually, I got the courage to get out of bed. I opened the door, flipped the hallway light on again, and looked around. Nothing. I checked every room again, even went downstairs this time. The front and back doors were locked. No broken windows, no signs of anything. I barely slept the rest of that night. The next day, I tried to act like nothing happened. I kept telling myself, maybe the handle was just loose, or maybe I dreamed it. But later that evening, when it started getting dark, I noticed something really strange. The chain lock on the front door was hanging loose. I know for a fact I'd put it on earlier in the day. It's one of those locks you have to slide into place so it doesn't just fall off on its own. I stood there staring at it for a good minute, trying to figure out how it came undone. I ended up pushing the couch against the front door before going to bed that night, just to be safe. But once again, around the middle of the night, I woke up to a noise. This time it was a faint tapping sound, coming from inside the wall behind my bed. I sat up and pressed my ear to the wall. It was like 2 slow taps, then silence, then another 2. I don't even know how to explain it. It wasn't pipes, it wasn't anything mechanical. It sounded deliberate. I ended up moving to the couch in the living room with all the lights on. I stayed awake until morning. But that evening I was sitting in the kitchen eating when I noticed the basement door was slightly open. I knew I'd locked it the night before. I even remembered jiggling the handle to make sure, but now it was cracked open a few inches. I just stood there staring at it, trying to convince myself maybe I hadn't shut it all the way. Still, I went over, shut it firmly, and locked it again. That night I didn't even bother going to my room. I camped out in the living room again with all the lights on. Around 2 in the morning, I was half asleep when I heard it again, that same slow knocking sound at the back door. I didn't move this time. I just laid there and listened. The knocks came 3 times, paused, then 3 times again, like a pattern. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, but then it stopped. A couple minutes later, I heard a floorboard creak upstairs, directly above me. I sat there, frozen, until the sun came up. When my parents finally got home the next day, I didn't tell them everything. I just said the house made some weird noises and I barely slept. But even now, sometimes when I'm alone, I'll hear those same faint knocks on the back door late at night. And every time I sit there wondering if someone was actually in the house that weekend.